I never imagined my mute daughter would speak until a black single OM changed our lives forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It began like any other Tuesday, gray clouds hanging low in the sky, threatening rain with every unspoken word. My heart raced as I watched my daughter, Leah, sitting silently in front of her toys, staring blankly at the colorful blocks strewn across the floor. The room was filled with the quiet chaos of a child's imagination, but Leah rarely engaged. Her soft brown eyes filled with confusion, a depth of thought that vanished into the unvoiced void between us. I could almost feel the weight of her silence, pressing down on my chest like a heavy stone. Leah had not spoken a word since her third birthday. I remember the day so vividly, her little voice chiming like a bell, all joy and laughter. I had hoped the words would come rushing back. After all, our world was filled with love, our family bound tightly by roots that ran deep. But those roots felt like chains now, holding me captive in a prison of worry. Her gentle father, my partner in every sense, wore his concern like a heavy cloak. I could see it etched on his face, worn and pale, his eyes betraying the fear we both tried to hide. The whispers of our friends grew louder, their concern mixing with echoes of doubt. I could hear them at dinner parties, their voices low but edged with worry. "Have you considered therapy?" they would ask, or maybe a speech specialist. Each suggestion felt like a dagger, piercing through my heart. I brushed each one aside, but their intentions haunted me. What if I was failing her? I lay awake at night, replaying the early moments, searching for signs, for reasons why she had stopped talking. Then came the day I met Rosetta, a single mom. She walked into our lives like a whirlwind, bringing a kind of chaotic energy that rattled my world. She was loud and vibrant, exuding the confidence of someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to show it. Her laughter bounced off the walls and stirred the stagnant air between us. Leah sat there, eyes wide, utterly entranced by this woman who spoke in colors and rhythms. I watched as Rosetta effortlessly reached into Leah's heart, teasing out the laughter I thought was lost forever. Something magical happened that day. As Rosetta shared stories from her own life, Leah's stillness began to crack. A flicker of recognition danced on her face, a glimmer of understanding that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in her silence after all. It was as if the words were trapped inside a glass jar, and Rosetta held the key to unlock it. With each story, each animated gesture, Leah leaned in closer, heart beating faster, the atmosphere thick with possibility. But just as hope began to bloom, an unforeseen shadow loomed over us. As Rosetta exited our lives, leaving me awash with questions, I felt a warning tingle in the back of my mind. I wanted to ask her where she lived, how we could contact her again, how she turned my daughter's silence into a conversation. But just like that, she vanished, leaving nothing but whispers of a promise in the air. Would Leah ever speak again? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days stretched into weeks, and as the sun dipped lower in the sky each evening, I found myself standing at the window, staring out into the growing shadows. Leah, my silent daughter, sat on the floor, her back to me, lost in her own world. The vibrant colors of her blocks felt dim without the dynamism they once had when her laughter filled the room. Life had a way of pulling you under, and I found myself drowning in a sea of uncertainty. I often replayed that day with Rosetta over and over, desperately clinging to the hope it kindled inside me. Despite the despair lingering in the air like an uninvited guest, a thin thread of gratitude wove through my heart for the brief but transformative moment with her. But as Rosetta remained a ghost in my memory, the silence thickened until a soft knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I opened it cautiously, and, to my astonishment, there she stood. Rosetta, with her brilliant smile and warm eyes that seemed to invite the sun in. "Hey there. I thought I'd stop by and check on my favorite little artist," she beamed, noticing Leah lounging on the carpet. A cautious flicker of hope ignited in my chest, instantly warring with the heaviness of my worry. Leah looked up, her expression a mix of wonder and trepidation. In the time since Rosetta had departed, the warmth Leah had drawn from her presence had faded, like a painting left to the mercy of the weather. Would Rosetta's arrival spark the energy that had once danced between them? I stood aside, allowing her to enter, as she knelt beside Leah. They exchanged smiles, Rosetta's contagious laugh sparking curiosity in my daughter's eyes. "Have you been building some amazing structures here?" Rosetta asked, pointing to the scattered blocks. Leah blinked, tilting her head. This was a dance, an invisible thread strung between two souls, with Rosetta pulling on it gently, coaxing Leah to step forward. But as moments turned to minutes, I felt the weight of reality crash down again. The initial thrill of Rosetta's return was tinged with the bitter edges of doubt. What if she wasn't able to keep this connection? I settled onto the couch, a silent observer caught in the rhythm of their budding interaction, my heart pounding. "Do you remember what I told you about the dragons?" Rosetta asked, launching into an elaborate story of a brave knight and the mystical creatures that soared through the sky. Leah leaned in closer, a spark of life illuminating her dull demeanor as Rosetta animatedly told tales of adventure. But still, Leah remained mute, her voice trapped in that elusive space, even as her eyes reflected engagement. Just when I thought hope would soon be extinguished again, Rosetta leaned in. "You can speak when you're ready, you know," she whispered with an intensity that held Leah's gaze. "And when you do, I promise it will be the most beautiful sound." In that moment, Leah's expression shifted. I could almost hear the thoughts swirling inside her mind. Was she ready to harness that courage? But then, surprise washed over me as Rosetta's phone chimed, breaking the spell. She glanced at it, her smile faltering for a brief second. The light in her eyes dimmed. "I am sorry, sweetie, but I have to go. Something urgent came up." The words fell from her lips like a fragile glass vase shattering on the floor. Leah's eyes, once bright with anticipation, dimmed at an alarming speed, retreating back into the silence she had long embraced.
"No,"
I heard myself whisper, the anguish rolling off my tongue, but it was too late. Rosetta turned, her energy suddenly distant, as if an invisible wall had formed between them. "I'll be back, Leah. I promise," she said, but the weight of that promise felt impossibly heavy, like snow settling on an unfinished roof. Then, as the door clicked shut behind her, lightning struck my heart, the strangest sensation filling the air, as if the world had shifted. I turned back to Leah, who was now crouching by her blocks, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Mommy," she finally whispered, her voice a soft breeze that carried a hurricane of emotions. But just as those words flickered back into existence, the unexpected sound of another knock cut through the air. My heart dropped. Would it be Rosetta? Or a different visitor? I opened the door to reveal a stranger, a tall woman with an athletic frame, her expression gripping my spirit with an unshakable certainty. "I'm looking for Rosetta," she stated, her voice authoritative yet melodic. "Do you know when she'll be back?" The air thickened with tension, a heavy uncertainty settling over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would shift everything once more. Just as hope brushed against the edges of my heart, I stood facing a new emotional cliffhanger. The tall woman lingered at the doorway, her presence both commanding and unsettling. For a heartbeat, I registered the rising tide of fear, mingling with curiosity. Her dark skin gleamed beneath the evening light filtering through the hallway. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, accentuating the sharp lines of her face. I didn't know if I wanted to invite her in, or gently close the door to protect whatever fragile piece remained inside. "I'm sorry, do you know Rosetta well?" I asked, trying to conceal my growing apprehension. The woman took a step forward as if sensing my hesitation. "Sorry to barge in like this, me name's Claire. I'm Rosetta's sister." The connection hit me hard, like a bell tolling at midnight. I had known Rosetta had siblings. It was a reminder of the layers of history we all carried, hidden beneath the surface. I processed her statement, swallowing the newfound weight of Rosetta's life. She was just here, I said, glancing back to where Leah still sat on the floor, her face etched with confusion. She had to leave unexpectedly. The excuse felt hollow against the depths I knew Rosetta had shared with us, how her presence had begun to mend some of the brokenness we both carried. Claire's expression softened, her eyes flickering to Leah. "Is it okay if I come in?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I promise I won't be a bother." I hesitated but nodded, allowing her passage into our uncertain world, fearing the exposure, yet craving the warmth of connection. As she entered, I could feel Leah's apprehensive gaze boring into us, an unspoken question floating in the air. I am Leah," she finally whispered, her voice barely rising above the din of unshared thoughts. "Hi, Leah. That's a beautiful name," Claire replied, crouching down to meet my daughter's eyes. "I've heard so much about you from Rosetta. She thinks you're a superstar." The sincerity pieced together something momentarily lost in our Hausia connection, woven with affection, a bridge built from what Rosetta had seeded in this fragile silence. Leah blinked, a shadow of doubt passing over her features. I could see the indecision reflected in her eyes. Would this woman be another visitor destined to leave, like Rosetta? Claire settled onto the floor, intentionally placing herself at Leah's level. "Do you mind if I join you? I've got a few stories of my own I could share." To my astonishment, Leah nodded slightly, her curiosity piqued, perhaps drawn in by Claire's thoughtful presence. In that moment, something shifted. The silence surrounding my daughter began to crack, revealing the poignant beauty simmering beneath. "Did you know that my sister's known as the Dragon Tamer?" Claire began, laughing softly as she caught my attention too. "She won the art contest in her school, drawing a whole series about dragons. Legend says if you draw them just right, they'll bestow you with their secrets." As Claire told her stories, I noted the way Leah's eyes widened, her fingers absent-mindedly reaching for a block. For every word Claire spoke, my daughter leaned closer, inching along the invisible line that had kept her from vocal expressions. My heart raced, attending to every shift, every flicker of interest. But just as I began to hope that Claire could represent not only a connection to Rosetta, but perhaps a way forward for Leah as well, Claire's smile faltered momentarily. "I'm afraid things have been rough. Lately Rosetta's been dealing with a lot at home. She could really use support." I clenched my jaw, the balloon of hope deflating as it collided with a cloud of worry and uncertainty. "What do you mean?" The words escaped my lips before I could control them, stifled but filled with urgency. Claire cleared her throat, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her posture. "There's been trouble with her mother, health issues, compounded with, well, it's complicated. She's been feeling overwhelmed, feeling like she's letting everyone down." Something about Claire's confession triggered a stirring in my heart. The warmth I felt earlier dimmed, swallowed by concern. I imagined Rosetta navigating her world with heavy burdens, alone amidst the shining light she cast on others. "Can we help?" Leah's voice cut through. It was steady and unshakable despite the tremor it tried to disguise. I turned to her, admiration clashing with bewilderment. How could such a simple question stem from my daughter, who had so often concealed herself in silence? Claire's eyes glistened with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "I think just being around, showing her that she's not alone would help immensely." As the three of us settled into an unexpected alliance, anticipation draped itself over the room, brimming with possibilities. But the sudden joy was marred by shadows of concern, leaving me grappling with the realization that our involvement would come with its own challenges. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a notification erupted from Claire's phone, breaking our reverie. Her expression shifted from warmth to panic. "I need to take this," she said, glancing at the message. "I'll be right back." I watched her retreat into another room, leaving Leah and me enveloped in a turbulent silence once more. Just as I prepared to speak to Leah, hoping to echo her earlier question regarding support, the walls felt like they pressed in on us. And then, in a moment that seemed both colossal and minuscule, Leah picked up a block and, with an intensity one had seldom witnessed, vocalized, "Mommy, I want to help Rosetta." The words hung heavily in the air, resonant and new. My heart raced, both thrilled and terrified. But before I could respond, Claire stepped back in, her eyes aflame with urgency. "I just received disturbing news. It's about Rosetta. We have to go find her." The suspense churned in my chest like the beginnings of a storm. I glanced at Leah, her gaze unwavering, hope and determination lighting up her face even as doubt clawed at my insides once more. Something beyond our control awaited us, and whatever it was, hope or despair, it would redefine everything once again. The air crackled with tension, the announcement hanging between us like a fragile thread about to snap. I could feel Leah's excitement pulsing alongside my anxiety, both colliding and sparking in the small space of our living room. "What do you mean, disturbing news?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Desperate to anchor myself against the unknown, Claire's face tightened, shadows carving deep lines into her warm features. "Rosetta didn't just leave. She went to her mother, and that's not where she's supposed to be." Her words seemed to tumble out in a rush, propelled by urgency, and I could see that her fear was deeply rooted, a visceral connection carved by blood and shared pain. "Why? What happened?" I pushed, instinctively wrapping an arm around Leah, who sat fixated on Claire's expressiona, mix of concern and confusion. Her mother's health took a turn for the worse, and Rosetta, well, she feels responsible. She might have gone to take care of her, but that's not her place to shoulder alone. Claire exhaled, her breath catching for a moment while her dark eyes surveyed us in the dim light. "I just fear she might be in over her head, and that she might not come back." Not without help did I end that moment. The reality struck me like a blow to the gut. Rosetta had come into our lives like a soothing balm to our wounds, yet here we were, perhaps unwittingly, festering new ones by doing nothing. My heart raced at the thought of facilitating this tumultuous journey, but the chaotic knot of dread in my stomach told me we were skating on thin ice. Conflicting emotions spun around me. Is this the moment where I let Leah step forth into something bigger, or do I lock both of us in our safe harbor? "Then we have to go find her," Leah declared, her small but resolute voice cutting through my indecision. It was as if this child, who had often wrapped herself in layers of silence, had suddenly drawn from some deep reservoir of courage that was nearly unfathomable. She was no longer the frightened girl looking for safety. She was ready to be a force of hope, if only I could keep pace. "Leah, honey," I began, distressed by the ambition outweighing our frail circumstances in that moment. "And oh, Mommy," Leah interjected firmly, her little brows pinching together as she held my gaze. "We can invite Rosetta here, can't we? She can't be alone. We can bring her back. You said that we want to help." Claire's brow softened, and for a moment, I could see the recognition of that dogged determination reflected in her features too. "She's right," Claire affirmed, placing a hand on Leah's shoulder. "If we can get to her before she makes a decision she can't take back, we might have a chance. But we need to hurry. I can drive us. I know where she's likely to go." I hesitated, fear flooding my senses with every second that passed. What if she doesn't want to come back? What if we're intruding? The sincerity in Leah's gaze warmed my heart. "If we don't try, we'll regret it, Mommy. Not just for us, but for Rosetta too." The resolve in my daughter's tiny frame ignited something within me, a flicker of belief that perhaps we weren't wholly helpless after all, that we could be part of another person's journey toward healing, just as Rosetta had been part of ours. With Claire's urgency pushing against my lingering doubts, I nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Okay, let's go," I finally said, my voice firm as I felt the weight of the moment settle around us. Together, we were setting out on uncharted ground, a search for not just Rosetta, but a reaffirmation of our connection to one another. I clasped Leah's hand tightly, realizing how critical it was to step forward in faith, even as uncertainty lurked. As we made our way outside, the evening air whipped around us, cradling the heaviness of our emotions. I climbed into Claire's car. Leah nestled securely in the back seat, and I felt a rush of determination wash over me. We were not just driving to find Rosetta. We were driving to reclaim our narrative, embracing the profound ties of kindness that existed in the cracks of our lives. But as we raced down the streets, Claire's phone buzzed incessantly in the passenger seat, jolting us with reality. When she glanced down, her expression darkened again this time. A shadow overtook her features. "It's my mother," she muttered, frowning at the screen. "I have to take this." Panic bubbled within me as she answered the call, my heart drumming loudly against my ribcage while Leah remained blissfully unaware of the potential storm. I watched as Claire's demeanor shifted, tension creeping back into her posture, her voice strained. The details of the conversation washed over me in a disorienting fog, snippets reaching my ears. Emergency and hospital echoed like haunting chimes, intensifying the chaos swirling in my chest. "You need to get your mother," I burst out, feeling the weight of responsibility shift in that now familiar tempest. What if something happened to the people we love?" Claire nodded, her voice wavering on the brink of tears. "I need to reschedule. I can't leave her, not now." The reality crashed down over me as I met Leah's questioning gaze in the rearview mirror. The fates began tugging at our lives, entwined in a narrative neither of us had anticipated. "We need to focus, Claire," I said, my mind racing rapidly yet desperately. "You have family, and we have Rosetta, and we still have to save us all." It was then that I realized, as shadows descended around us, hope might just be born out of our chaos, and perhaps, against all odds, we would unite to face whatever awaited us. Still, the cliffhanger loomed. The question of whether we would arrive in time for any semblance of a safe haven hung over us like a storm ready to break. As the car sped towards the hospital, uncertainty pulsed through each of us like a live wire. I turned to Leah, hoping to find a sliver of comfort in her wide, innocent eyes. But as she gazed out of the window, the flickering streetlights casting fleeting shadows across her face, I recognized the weight of the moment upon her little shoulders. A moment filled with urgency, yes, but also a profound lesson in courage. "Do you think Rosetta will be okay?" she asked after a stretch of silence, her voice just above a whisper, fragile and tentative. The sincerity in her question twisted at my heart. "What if she can't come back with us?" "Sometimes," I replied, searching for words that might ease the impending worry, "sometimes we need to go through hard things to grow. It doesn't always feel good, but it can make us stronger." Her brows furrowed, contemplating my response as if peeling back layers of meaning that I was not entirely sure I understood myself. My heart ached for her, for all she had endured as a child, unable to express herself as freely as others. The realization hit me harder than I anticipated, and the reflection that came with it was not easy. Leah had forged through complexity without the same tools most took for granted, learning to navigate a world that seemed, at times, unyielding and dismissive. In this moment, she was poised to change the lives of everyone in the care if only she could find her own voice. Claire's tension hung heavily in the air as she ended the call, her mother's increasingly frail condition now weaving into the fabric of our own quest. "I can't believe this is happening," she muttered, almost to herself. "I should have been there weeks ago." The guilt poured from her every word, saturating the already tense atmosphere. "Claire," I said, tentative yet determined, "you're doing the best you can. This is all too unpredictable right now. We can only focus on one thing at a time." As if on cue, the car lurched forward into a traffic jam, halting our momentum. Claire sighed, her hands tightened around the steering wheel as if it were the only tether left to her grounding. Leah turned back from her window, fidgeting slightly. "It's going to be okay, right?" she asked softly, the hope in her voice shining through. "Of course," Claire assured, though her voice trembled as she said it. Leah's courage was spilling over like a beacon, igniting an instinct in both of us to shield her from despair. Suddenly, we were all jolted as a heavy thud struck the car. Something had hit the side, and we all gasped together. I whipped around, peering through the tinted window as a woman, disheveled and frantic, squared her shoulders and waved frantically toward Claire. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice catching the attention of everyone in our small bubble. "I need a ride. Please." Leah's eyes widened in surprise. I glanced at Claire, who looked utterly bewildered, the conflict playing across her features. Should we stop, or should we continue? Was this a call for help, or a distraction we didn't have time for? "Mommy," Leah murmured, barely audible, but insistent. There was something in the woman's expression, desperation mingled with fear, and it tugged at a part of me that felt strangely familiar. The witching hour of uncertainty had arrived, and here was an unexpected ally asking for help. "We really can't, though," I said under my breath, yet my heart twisted as I noticed how desperately she needed to escape something unseen. But Leah shifted in her seat, determination igniting in her features. "What if she needs us to, Mommy?" she whispered, her voice urgent yet calm, like a grounding force amid rising chaos. With a deep breath, feeling the weight of Leah's gaze on me, I turned to Claire. "Pull over. We can't just leave someone stranded." The decision felt monumental, as if we were choosing to let hope intermingle with fear once again. Claire hesitated, and I could see she was teetering on the edge, the cost of our choices weighing heavily across her heart. But as the woman approached the car, her wild frizz of hair catching the wind, I could see a sense of vulnerability flickering in her eyes, a mirror to our own journey. "Okay, let's get her in," Claire relented, her voice steadying as she flicked the blinker on. As the woman slid into the front seat, a palpable energy filled the car. The world outside seemed to blur, our fates intertwining like vines in a dense forest. "Thank you," she gasped, clearly shaken. "My name is Janine." I didn't know where else to turn. Before I could respond, the air filled with tension, a harsh pile of realizations crashing down upon me. Did we have room to carry the weight of another struggle while we were barely holding ourselves together? But Leah's hand squeezed mine, and I felt the echoes of resilience against my heart. Perhaps, even in chaos, there existed a spark of unity, a chance to redefine our boundaries, to stretch our hearts wider. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, causing my breath to quicken. I fumbled for it, almost dropping it in the heightened stillness that had descended. As I glanced at the screen, the world seemed to shift again beneath me, a neglected voicemail from Rosetta. My heart raced, the weight of her isolation pressing in on us like a vengeful storm. "Please," Leah urged, her voice trembling with urgency as more questions crept in. "Can we listen to it?" Claire's eyes darted from the road to my phone, uncertainty shadowing her features. "It might change everything," she whispered, yet something about the suggestion made hope swell within me like an impending dawn, and as I pressed play, the echoes of Rosetta's voice filled the car, weaving an unexpected thread through the growing complexities of our lives. The truth that would emerge, raw and honest, was something none of us were fully prepared for. But at that moment, all paths converged, and it felt like a reckoning was upon us, threading our quiet fears and hopes into a powerful tapestry of connection ready to unveil itself. The crackling voice of Rosetta reverberated through the cramped car, drawing us closer to the brink of something monumental. Hey, it's me. I don't really know how to say this." Her voice trembled like a fragile leaf in an unsettling wind, and my heart surged with apprehension. Claire and Leah leaned in, mirroring my own need to decipher the urgency wrapped in her words. "Please," she continued, "if you're listening to this, it means something's gone wrong. I tried to reach out sooner, but I didn't have the words. The doctors say I have a choice to make for my treatment, and I really need to say it out loud." As her voice wavered, my emotions mirrored the storm brewing within. The car seemed to morph into a sanctuary where our struggles intertwined, each of us trapped in the threads of someone else's pain. Janine's eyes flickered with understanding. She wasn't just a passerby anymore, but a part of our broken tapestry. "I don't know if I can beat this," Rosetta said, her vulnerability piercing like a shard of glass, "but I don't want my fears to steal my voice. I've struggled so much to be heard. What if I don't make it back to the people I love?" It felt as though time suspended, the weight of her admission sinking into the air between us, magnifying the pulsating heartache of our journey. Claire's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel, as Leah's small fingers traced the fabric of her seat in silent communion. Suddenly, Leah broke the silence, her voice rising softly above the crackle of the recording. "She's scared, just like us," The outcome of her words stirred something deep within me, and I turned to her. In her expression lay a profound understanding of fear and hope, melding together in ways I hadn't yet explored. "Yeah, Leah," I replied, wiping tears from my eyes. "We're all scared." As the voicemail played on, I noticed Janine steal a glance at Leah, her gaze simmering with something akin to recognition. "You talk about the hard things, too," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Voice takes courage, little one. It knows no boundaries." In that single moment, Leah's face lit up with a spark, igniting her resolve as she took a deep breath. "I want to help her, too," she said, determination blossoming across her features. "What if I talk to Rosetta?" I felt a sense of disbelief wash over me even amid our turmoil. Leah had grasped the essence of solidarity. The realization that a child could mirror hope in such a desolate landscape was awe-inspiring, and though I wanted to reel in the gravity of the moment, I found myself caught in its magnetic pull. Janine shifted in her seat. "You're so brave," she whispered to Leah, her eyes glistening. "What would you tell her?" Without hesitation, Leah glanced at me, earnestness sweeping across her small frame. "I would say that it's okay to be afraid. We all feel alone sometimes, but we don't have to be. I'm here. You can tell me what you need." Tears welled in my eyes, a mix of pride and sorrow gripping my heart. Here was Leah, a little girl carrying the weight of her own silence, yet articulating hope with a grace that resonated deeply within me. "Let's call her back," I whispered, a boldness rising within me. "Maybe she needs to hear that someone is ready to listen," Claire nodded, seeming to find solace in Leah's courage. With every passing second, it felt as if we were aligning ourselves into a new rhythm of hope, like the reassuring beat of a heart echoing once more after a disheartening silence. As I reached for my phone, the weight of Janine's presence began to settle more heavily into the car, her own turmoil mirrored in Rosetta's voice. She seemed to wrestle with the notion of being unworthy of our compassion while simultaneously being in need of it. She leaned in, as if the words carried across the front seat. "You don't have to feel like you're alone anymore," she said, her voice quieter now but resolute. "I know what it's like to feel invisible." The air was charged as I called Rosetta back, my heart racing with anticipation. Would she hear Leah's voice? Would this moment connect the dots of all our struggles in unforeseen ways? Dialing, I pressed the phone to my ear, the ringing echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. But just as the voicemail picked up, a sudden loud crash broke through the era-deafening sound of metal striking metal, followed by shouts from the street. The car jerked violently, sending all of us careening forward. As panic ensued around us, a feeling of dread enveloped my chest. Glancing quickly to the side, I caught sight of a car that had plowed into the curb, smoke billowing out from under its hood. My first thought was to ensure Leah was safe, but as I turned toward Janine, I noticed her face frozen in horror, a flash of recognition sparking in her eyes. "No," she muttered, her voice rasping, faint yet urgent. "It can't be." As the dust settled and the chaos sank in, we began to process this new layer of confusion. What had just happened? And what unexpected truths might unveil themselves from this chaos? As I held my breath, the gravity of Janine's expression whispered of secrets we had yet to unearth, laying fragile connections like threads leading into shadows. The smoke swirled in the air like forgotten memories, chaotic and tinged with the acrid scent of rubber and gasoline. My heart raced, and my thoughts spiraled as a distant siren echoed in the background. Creeping closer, it felt both reassuring and ominous at once. Leah clutched my hand tightly, her small fingers trembling, while Claire's eyes darted from the window to each of us, searching for assurance, clarity in the haze. I turned back to Janine. "What is it?" I asked, my voice almost drowned by the cacophony outside. "What do you recognize?" But any answer she might have given hung unspoken in her throat as she opened the car door, breathless and wide-eyed. Without a word, she stepped out into the chaos, and the rest of us exchanged glances filled with fear and confusion. It was then that I realized how deeply Janine was entwined in this tangled story, how the plight surrounding us was pulling her into its grip. "Janine!" Claire called, reaching for her.
Wait.
You can't go out there. But Janine seemed to move instinctively, her eyes locked onto something I couldn't see. The world around us blurred as she forged ahead, and against all odds, I found strength enough to follow her. Leah remained behind, her small body crouched low, peering warily through the frame of the open car door. Stay close, I shouted, though my own heart was racing at the thought of moving away from her. With each step we took into the chaos of the street, it felt as if I were traversing a chasm, and I could sense the precipice of a revelation lurking just beyond the veil. As we neared the wreckage, the crowd that had gathered hummed with anxious energy, questions spilling from lips like raindrops. I caught sight of the driver, a frazzled man scrambling to exit the vehicle, his clothes torn and dusty. But it was the woman standing at the periphery of the scene that arrested my attention. Tall, strong, her skin gaudy against the soot-streaked pavement, she hesitated amid the blur of panic. She seemed a beacon of calm. Through the chaos, a fleeting flicker of recognition illuminated Janine's face as she approached the stranger. My instincts screamed at me to pull her back, but there was something unshakably magnetic about the woman. Mommy. Came the sudden cry from Janine's lips, and the breath drew from my lungs as the word echoed through the tumultuous air. It hit me like a freight train, one that crashed straight through my defenses. It was not merely a word. It was a lifeline that tethered Janine to the woman in front of her, one I hadn't known was part of her story. Janine, the woman exclaimed, a tenderness unfurling from her expression amidst the chaos. Oh my God, is it really you? As they embraced, a swirling mix of emotions brewed within my confusion, dread, hope. Janine's voice rang clear, a sound beautiful and vibrant that spread buoyancy through the thrumming chaos. I could barely comprehend the sudden juxtaposition of joy and grief. Everything I had perceived about Janine's silences shattered like glass around me. Mom, Janine said as she pulled back, and her shoulders quaked slightly, I thought I'd lost you forever. My heart sank, a fragmented pulse echoing in my ears. Who was this woman? What had transpired between them? Questions swirled like autumn leaves set adrift on a gusting wind. As I stood at the edges of this familial reunion, feeling more like a spectator than a mother, the surrounding noise faded, and the world shrank down to just the two of them. The promise of unanswered questions loomed large, and I could feel something shifting within me. The vulnerability that had once cocooned me in darkness began to fray, threads of light weaving in. Could truth be intertwined with the pain? Leah's tiny voice broke through my thoughts. Mommy, what's happening? Her innocence pulled me back, forcing clarity. I turned to her, swallowing the lump in my throat. I don't know, baby, I said softly. But it seems like there's a story we need to hear. Just then, the once calm woman's voice shattered the tension. I didn't mean to disappear, Janine. I thought it was for the best. Where her words landed, the gravity began stacking layers of urgency, spinning a web of connection I could hardly comprehend. There had been so many silenced voices longing to break free. They echoed through the air like the distant sirens. But before I could process this new reality, I caught sight of a solitary figure standing apart from the commotion. It was an elderly man, his salt and pepper hair tousled, his face grave yet wistful. He was clutching a weathered suitcase that seemed to reflect decades of untold stories. Our eyes locked momentarily, and within that glance, a chilling recognition passed between Ushi's gaze whispered of familiar ties, of shadows melding into daylight. Janine was still lost in the embrace of her mother, but the man's stare did not waver, as if he were searching for a long-lost piece of himself. Who was he? And what truths lay hidden in the silent history he seemed compelled to reveal? In that moment, the world crashed open, a universe of questions spiraling before me, as the crumbling edges of what I thought I knew fanned out into kaleidoscopic possibilities. And at that precipice of revelation, I felt a shiver of urgentia, harbinger of what was to come. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, threading through the fevered whispers of the crowd as I watched the moment unfurl before me. Janine and her mother, a unified silhouette against the backdrop of chaos, seemed suspended in time. It felt like the world held its breath, waiting for the next beat to emerge from this powerful reunion. But just when I thought hope might blossom, the tension returned, coiling around my throat. It was palpable. The shadows lurking just out of sight seemed to inch closer, muting the flickers of light within me. I took a step toward them, but the elderly man's piercing gaze kept pulling me backward, a tether to a forgotten past waiting to be unearthed. "Janine," her mother said, a tremor in her voice, releasing her daughter for a moment. "There's so much to explain. I never should have left you. I was scared." And just like that, the walls of a universe I thought I understood began to crack. I felt the pull of longing mixed with disbelief. The raw honesty between them made a shudder scratch at my heart. Questions built in my throat, a choking mix of anger and compassion. How could a mother abandon her child, even for a moment? But my instincts tugged at me, reminding me that there were always layers to grief, shadows lurking beneath the surface. An unexpected sound broke the intense scrutiny of the moment, a young child sobbing nearby. My eyes flickered over to Leah, who had been gripping the confines of our car, her face scrunched in distress. Something twisted inside me at the sight of her. I moved back, reaching out for Leah. "Come on, sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm right here, she turned to me. The words Janine had spoken echoed in my mind. This moment felt like a ripple in a still pond, refracting light into myriad feelings, each vying for recognition. I squeezed Leah's small hand, standing between her and the sharp edges of confusion and emotion swirling around us. But then, the elderly man took a step closer, his eyes locked on Janine and her mother. "You've grown," he said, his voice hoarse yet steady, unveiling a deep well of emotion. "I've waited for this day, for so long." With every syllable, I could feel the collective inhale of the crowd. Time suspended yet again, magnetized by the intensity behind those words. Was this man another puzzle piece to Janine's story? The connection felt immediate, and a chill crept down my spine, contradicting the warmth that had bloomed moments earlier. Janine's mother paled, caught off guard by his presence. "Isaac?" she whispered, the name reverberating with decades of untold history. It was a name that seemed to resonate with secrets ricocheting through the air, layer upon layer of buried truths progressing towards an inevitable revelation. I stepped closer, sensing an invisible thread weaving our lives into a complex tapestry. It was all background noise suddenly morphing into a symphony, and I wanted so desperately to understand the melody. What do you mean?" Janine stammered, looking between the two adults who had parsed her life into such vivid parts, pieces of an unsolved puzzle. Tears glistened in her eyes, confusion mingling with intensity. Isaac reached out slowly, cautiously, like touching something precious but fragile. "You don't know it yet, but you have family that has searched for you," he breathed, a tremor threading his words. The gravity of the statement landed like a weighty stone, sending ripples through my heart and unraveling the fine threads of hope I had begun weaving for my daughter. Family? What did that mean for us? Janine recoiled slightly, understanding dawning on her face. I don't understand. What do you mean?" Just then, the chaos swelled surrounding us, voices overlapping, calls for help emerging from the depths of the crowd. An ambulance's siren sliced through the lingering tension, a harsh reminder that beyond this emotional whirlwind, reality bore its own demands. As paramedics rushed to the scene of the wreck, I felt the sudden compulsion to protect my daughter, to shield her from the unpredictable storm brewing around us. "Janine, we need to," I started, but my voice was drowned in the fray, in the cries and shouts that muddled what little clarity had broken surface. Leah squirmed closer to me, the shadow of the crowd casting a web of hesitation around her. "Are we okay, Mommy?" Her eyes mirrored my own confusion, layered with a fragility that tugged at every maternal instinct within me. Before I could reconcile my thoughts into something tangible, I felt the strong pulse of Janine's hand slipping away. She was drawn toward the man, the pull of a forgotten tether strong enough to break loose the chains that had bound her. There in the midst of the swirling chaos, she began to take tentative steps toward Isaac and her mother, her figure becoming a tiny yet determined silhouette against the ruin of the scene. "Janine!" I cried, my voice rising above the chaos, but it was swallowed whole. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her back into the fold where I could keep her safe. But a part of Maya burgeoning, unbidden part longed to see her step into whatever was budding there, a garden sprouting in the cracks of uncertainty, and as I stood rooted in a moment that felt like a violent stillness, I caught a glimpse of the woman by Janine's side, her eyes wide, tracing the tide of emotions. There, glistening against the backdrop of soot and wreckage, lay the possibilities of love intertwined with loss unfurling before my very eyes. But at that moment, something inside me shifted, a shudder of recognition prickling at the edges of my consciousness. My heart stopped as I finally understood the elderly man who had stepped forward, the whispers of family, the way Janine had strayed from my side. There was more here than I could have ever anticipated. An invisible thread connected them all, and it glimmered too starkly to ignore. "Janine!" I shouted one last time, desperation lacing my tone, but my voice was just another note lost in the chaotic crescendo around us. As her figure blurred in the thrumming mass, the echoes of her name trembled down the line of our unraveling story, closing on a breathless precipice of uncertainty, and as the sirens blared their relentless reality through the smoky haze, a voracious question twisted within me, claws digging deep, scratching at the certainty I had clung to for so long. What if everything I believed about our lives was about to unravel? And what truths lingered on the edge of revelation, waiting to crash in like a tidal wave, threatening to drown any semblance of the lives we had fought so hard to build? The tension stretched taut, a fragile wire against the backdrop of chaos as I darted forward, pushing my way through the throng. The cacophony enveloped me, the cries of confusion merging with the sirens, but all I could focus on was Janine. In that moment, the world faded. It was just her figure advancing ahead, the promise of family pulling her closer to Isaac, while I was left grasping at the air, helpless. "Mommy!" Leah's wavering voice cut through my thoughts, urgent and terrified. I turned back to her, my heart breaking at the sight of her small frame, so vulnerable against the tumult around us. I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her as tightly as I could, as though my embrace could shield her from the uncertain storms swirling around us. "Shoo, baby, I'm here," I whispered, smoothing her hair back. "It's okay. Nothing is going to happen." But deep inside, my voice faltered under the weight of my own words. Did I believe them? Leah clung tighter, burying her face against my shoulder. "But Janine," she sniffled, glancing over my shoulder at the crowd. "Is she going to be okay?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look away from Janine, who was still moving toward Isaac and her mother. A foreign dread bloomed in my chest, twisting painfully. "She's going to be okay," I repeated, but the truth felt like a lie shrouded in uncertainty. A shadow swept over us, and I looked up to find a woman standing beside us, a tall, striking figure with an air of steady calm that stood in stark contrast to the chaos. Her hair was pulled back tightly, but her dark skin glowed with warmth. She was an anchor amid the storm, and I instinctively held Leah a little closer, seeking comfort and reassurance. "Hey there," the woman said with a gentle smile, kneeling slightly to Leah's height. "It's okay. I'm here to help." "Are you scared?" Leah blinked at her, the distress softening slightly as she nodded. "My friend is over there." The worry in Leah's voice was palpable, the thought of her friend caught in the whirlwind making her bottom lip tremble. "I know. I can see her," the woman assured, her eyes flickering toward Janine. "And you're being very brave. Sometimes we have to be brave when things feel loud and confusing." I watched as Leah considered the words. There was something about the woman, her presence seemed to wrap around my daughter like a thick, warm blanket, offering solace against the shards of uncertainty hanging in the air. I felt gratitude budding within me, hoping this unexpected kindness could be the balm Leah needed. "Can you tell her to come back?" Leah whispered, her voice small and wavering. The woman's expression softened. "Let's give it a moment." You're doing wonderfully. But I have an idea. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, fuzzy pink teddy bear. How about you keep this to hold? It's always good to have a friend close by. Leah's eyes widened, and a sparked flicker of hope ignited in her gaze as she took the bear, clutching it tight. Something within me shifted, ignited by the warmth of this small act of kindness. Thank you, I said, my voice hushed with gratitude, recognizing that even in chaos, connection could be found in the most unexpected places. But just as Leah began to look a little more relaxed, I saw Janine take a definitive step closer to Isaac and her mother. Every movement felt like a thread being pulled taut, unraveling the story I thought I knew. I lifted my voice again, squeezing Leah in closer as panic surged inside me. Janine, please, come back. Janine turned at the sound of my voice, confusion etched on her face, but it was Isaac who spoke next, addressing her as though unveiling hidden truths. You've been so brave, Janine. Your mother has always thought of you, every day. There is so much you don't know, but you deserve to know your true story. And it was those words that echoed in my mind, clawing at my composure. What was the true story? As Janine's eyes flickered between the two adults and me, searching for clarity among veiled emotions, I could only watch in silence, dread curling in my stomach. Janine's expression hardened, a flicker of vulnerability clashing with resolve. I don't care about my past. I care about my life right now. What about Leah? The assertion broke through the tension, demanding attention. My heart raced. Would she really choose to throw away the past? Would she let go of the opportunity to learn more, even if it was painful? The fear of losing her to a world of unknowns sent a jolt through me. Janine, please wait. Just then, Leah tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, I want to go help her. I don't want her to be alone. The earnestness in the young girl's voice struck me deeply. How brave she was to want to support Janine. I looked down at her, my heart battling with a mixture of pride and fear. I don't think we can help right now, sweetheart. But before I finished my thought, the crowd erupted in shouts, turning our attention toward a sudden shift. In the distance, emergency personnel began sorting through the wreckage, their movements brisk and purposeful. But it wasn't the scene that had caught my eye. It was Janine, drawing even further into her new world, her back turned to me, leaving an ever-growing chasm of uncertainty. Just as panic rose, I caught Isaac's gaze again. Something hidden flickered behind his eyes. Time and heavy emotion weighed upon him. We can find each other. All of us, he said softly, almost to himself, as though awakening undiscovered emotions within. I felt another tremor trace its way through me, something powerful and unrepentant. What if he knew something about our family? About Leah? My breath hitched in my throat, a knot forming around the truth I had yet to confront. In that whirlpool of swirling chaos that connected us, all those pieces of hidden histories, was it possible that our stories were intertwined more deeply than I ever dared to imagine? As I took a step forward, yearning to bridge the distance threatening to pull us apart, Janine's voice rose above it all, raw and firm. No, I won't be a part of this. Her words slammed like thunder, a declaration of independence mixed with a dash of fear. And as she turned away despite the call of her past, something inside me splintered. What if we lost her in this fight for understanding? What if, in seeking answers, we tore apart the fragile connection we had worked so desperately to forge? As I stood there, torn between my child reaching into the unknown and the chaos raving around us, the echoes of fear and the pulse of unexpected kindness seemed to converge in a moment that was both heartbreaking and inevitable. The path ahead felt fraught with shadows waiting to swallow us whole, and with each unfinished question spiraling in my mind, I understood that this journey would only lead to more revelations, more chaos, and an impending decision that would shape our very existentia, thunderous wave crashing over us before we could even catch our breath. When the steady pulse of chaos pulsed in tandem with my racing heart, everything seemed to hang on the precipice of choice. Janine had chosen to step away, casting her fate into the unknown. And it was in that shattering moment I understood that the fear lurking in me was the same that had gripped her, the same shadow that often enveloped my own Leah. "Mommy," Leah murmured, her voice a soft tremor as she clutched the teddy bear tighter. Her innocent gaze begged for reassurance that I could not muster. The cacophony around Usrans, shouting, half-formed fears colliding in the air felt heavier against the fragile beam of hope that shimmered in her eyes. Just as I prepared to shield her from the turmoil unfolding before us, something shifted within me. A deeper understanding began to bubble to the surface, intertwining with the raw energy filling the space. I knelt down, meeting Leah's gaze, and took a steadying breath. "Leah, do you remember a time when you felt scared but still found a way to be brave?" My heart raced, desperate for her to connect with the essence of courage that lay dormant beneath the surface of her silence, her brow furrowed for a moment, the gears of her little mind turning. "Like when I went to the doctor?" she replied, a nod of recognition lighting her expression. "I wanted to be brave, so you wouldn't be scared, right?" "Exactly," I replied, wrapping my arms around her. "And bravery looks different for everyone. Sometimes it's speaking out, and other times it's simply being there for others." I pointed to Janine, who was still trying to find her footing amidst the rising tides of emotion in every direction. "Maybe she needs us, too." As I witnessed Leah's expression shift, the spark of understanding igniting within her, I felt the boundaries of our tight-knit world expand. Could we offer her the same safety we sought? Could we extend the very fabric of our being beyond the fear that had gripped us so tightly? "Can we help Janine?" Leah asked, her voice steadying with newfound resolve. Without hesitation, she took a bold step toward the scene. "Leah, no." I grabbed her gently but firmly, a wave of panic rising. But Leah looked back at me, her eyes gleaming with conviction, a reflection of her heart's desire. "Mommy, she's scared. If we just let her go, how will she make it out there?" My heart soared and sank in equal measure. "But she's trying to figure things out on her own," I warned softly, the weight of each word pressing down on me. "Just like me," Leah reminded me, our deeply entwined stories echoing in that moment. The wisdom in her voice pierced through the layers of my adult worries. Perhaps by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we could create threads of connection to those who felt loss. I looked to Janine, searching for assurance, but it was there, deep within her expression, an echo of longing that resonated with my own heart's call to help. She was navigating a storm just like we had, and perhaps it was time we all bridged our divides. "Okay, sweetheart," I said finally, desperation making my voice tremble. "Let's go together." As we moved toward Janine, the air shifted, coalescing around the possibility of unity. I saw Leah's small frame weaving through the crowd and unexpected force, igniting empathy as she walked with courage. "Janine," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos with a clarity that soared above everything else. The crowd stilled, drawn to the gentle tenacity of a child who refused to let someone else bear their loneliness in silence. Janine turned, confusion in her eyes giving way to surprise. In that moment, she recognized the gift Leah was offering and the courage radiating from her tiny frame. "What do you want?" she asked, her bravado dimming under the weight of uncertainty. "I want you to know that you're not alone," Leah said, her voice ringing with sincerity. "We can help you find answers. You don't have to hide from what happened before." In that heartfelt moment, something remarkable shifted. The air grew lighter, as if a storm cloud had parted, revealing a rainbow of connection. There it was, the realization that forgiveness, whether for oneself or others, could bring solace, even to those we barely knew. "Thank you," Janine whispered, tears glistening in her eyes, her armor starting to crack. "But I'm struggling. How can I heal while the past haunts me?" Suddenly, I felt the tether of responsibility bind us tighter. By allowing others in, by talking and sharing, the profound weight of my own journey coalesced into a single truth. You have a family that wants to understand, even if it feels heavy right now. Isaac stepped forward, a note of warmth in his voice. "I've always hoped to find you." The bonds of family run deeper than just blood. They weave through shared experiences, unprocessed grief, and overwhelming joy. Janine inhaled, the balance of fear and hope coalescing in the air between us. "I'm so scared," she confessed, vulnerability bubbling just beneath the surface. "That's okay," Leah replied softly, her small hand reaching out and breaking through the barrier of fear surrounding Janine. "We're scared too." The honesty stretched between them, a bridge built on shared understanding of fear, every beat echoing with resilience. And then, in an unexpected cascade of emotion, Janine stepped forward, taking Leah's outstretched hand. The warmth of connection poured forth, sealing the fractures between them. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered, and the words opened the floodgates, releasing every unvoiced hurt that had lingered. As more of the crowd gravitated toward the transformation unfolding before us, I felt a powerful sense of hope fill the air. The silhouette of community began to form in the most unusual of circumstances, a tapestry woven not by individual threads of sorrow but by shared pain, laughter, and newfound courage. And when Leah's small voice whispered, "We can be brave together," I felt a surge of love so profound that it threatened to seep through the cracks of every unearthed wound. And in that defining moment, I understood our lives were no longer solitary in nature. They had coalesced into an intricate weave of resilience, compassion, and the shared quest for healing. I squeezed Leah's hand, and as I observed the beautiful connection emanating before me, I embraced the knowledge that, even amid chaos, we could rise together. The evening light shone down upon us, illuminating the path ahead. In that moment of raw vulnerability, acceptance painted a picture of hope, redemption within the broken, connections blossoming from despair. In those closing seconds, I finally understood the truth that had echoed within me all along. Together, we can break the silence. And in those words, I found the courage to face the unfolding journey before us.